Hello everyone, and welcome to Kathy's Corner. We're just getting started here to see if we have any more folks joining us, but we're delighted here in June 2023. She says, inserting because we will do many of these, welcoming you all to our monthly session of Kathy's Corner. I'm Barbara Tien. I guess that makes me your host. And I am delighted to welcome you all as we were just chatting before the recording began, welcoming you all from around the world as we go ahead and get started. I suppose it's because I have the slides ready. I'm ready to present them because we're trying on this whole grown-up worldview of doing these sessions as a real company and everything. Not that we really are or anything, but we're trying to make the most of it. So with that, I'm going to share quick slides that will keep me organized as we get started. So, whoops, wrong button. No, not share this design, present. Thank you. Some of you may recognize Canva. I am getting my chops in there, getting used to it. So here we are with Kathy's Corner. And this gives me a way to give you a high-level sense of the agenda for today. It's pretty simple. There's this little introduction, and then it's all Kathy. I will wrap up with some details of some of the new stuff that we've brought in. I just thought of one more while I'm at it, and step through these. I'm putting these all together so that we can record them and they're sensible after the session. And we'll talk some more about that at the conclusion. So a few logistics to make sure that we are all comfortable in, I know, a new environment for many of you using Google Meet instead of Zoom. We can go ahead and say that. The number one best practice, I think I have beyond anything, is to make sure that in using Google Meet, you take the the tab, because it's appearing in your browser, you pull the tab out into its own window. It seems silly, but invariably you click on something else and then you don't remember where it went because you're used to Zoom, which is running in an app. By pulling it out into its own tab, it's generally easier to find than trying to find which of many tabs it is. Okay, it's just a simple bit of feedback. And then for some of these chat mechanics, first, there is no one-on-one chatting. So if you're used to Anne slipping over and making a comment to Anna, any comment you make in chat, everybody sees. So keep that in mind. Second is where the chat is, of course, is right next to that the little person icon with a 9 on it now. That little chat is what you tap, and that's where you can see what's happening and the conversation. But basically, all conversation is seen by everybody, but it's also not captured in the video that I share. So what happens in here in chat stays in here in chat. So that's good to know. Related to that, if you paste in links, which I highly encourage as a way for each other to share tips and tricks, keep in mind that it's always better to put the HTTPS, the protocol designator, with the URL, because then it's clickable. And the best thing to do when you see a link you want to follow up with is to go ahead and click on it so it opens the tab, and because you're going to lose the chat. Okay. Second is all related to any of your settings. You can obviously all see and hear now, but should you need to fool with any of your settings for microphone, headset, that sort of thing, you'll find it there under the 3 dots. So very simple. Ooh. Well, who knew? So a little bit about this post-Ponga community we're building. As you all know, I recognize all of you as having been members of Ponga at some point or other. This is a post-Ponga world because our beloved Ponga is no longer online. And in thinking about it, I realized that while for many of you came to Ponga for like facial organization and specific product features, I've been told over and over again that people stayed because of the community. And I've realized that as we brought down the platform, I'm staying for the community too. And I've been thrilled to have so many of you come and join me here as well. And actually, we're now growing this community beyond Ponga, which is really quite a thrill. I'm starting to see more and more people who kind of didn't even know what Ponga was show up in the community. And that's really, really wonderful. Looking at the larger scope of kind of why does it matter? Why am I so, what am I doing? Which I ask a lot. I've realized that what made Ponga important in the in this world of family history in the first place is because Ponga created a way to really build on what people were doing anyway for family history with the pictures that they were bringing into their family history, and started, because the content they were bringing into Ponga pictures, started to think of the family history itself, able to do new things, able to collect and share more stories in new ways because it's all digital. So that has me realizing that what we're doing here in this community is really focusing on the potential and best practices and ideas and all those other kinds of things about digital family history. It almost seems silly to be talking about this in 2023, and yet you even Google digital family history and or hashtags, it's just not there. It's like it's so obvious we're not seeing it. But I think it's worth really focusing and really thinking about what that means to where we're going and what we can do with this thing. Now, what this isn't, and this is really important to me personally, this is not a product pitch. As you probably realize as part of Ponga, I'm not very good at selling. I'm not very good at pitching. So I don't have to do that because I don't have something to pitch anyway. It's not a training course. If there's a demand for it and a specific interest, and there's a confidence that something I know how to teach, I would be delighted. I actually really do enjoy doing that, and I could do some of those kinds of things at scale, for a reasonable fee if that makes sense. But I'm not looking to do that as a business. For now, I don't know what I'm going to be doing as a business, but this is something I need to be doing, and I want it set up and going so that it can keep going, even if I'm getting money some other way. So don't worry about that. Things about what this is most importantly is a community. And it's something that we're constantly experimenting with, as you've probably already figured, for starters, using Google Meet instead of Zoom, because frankly, it's free. And we're using a lot of tools because they're free, or I can make them work for very little, because it's my pocket. But to make that all work, feedback is really key. And I think those of you who have given me feedback know that I'm listening and responding. And I think the whole community is better because of your feedback. So keep it coming. Finally, I keep calling these things workshops. I'll probably get fancier about what different kinds of things are called. This one is Corner, because Kathy is our cornerstone. And it's I'm always looking for ways that we can get participation, get your engagement, get you to talk it up and give us feedback. Don't worry if you're taking over a program. I'll call you in to have you do your own program. That's okay. But I really do want to have the engagement and participation and keep it going for everyone. So with that, let me get to the magical mystery Kathy herself, and let her share her screen and do her presentation and take it from there. How about that? Kathy, over to you.
Okay. So window, that's the window. We're just testing out technology here.
Woohoo! We're like professionals.
Okay. Oh, wow, that worked. Now I can't see you anymore, so if you want to interrupt me, you just go right ahead and do that, and ask a question. A couple things I wanted to start with. I should have done this before I was showing my, well, I could, can you still see me or just my screen?
Yes, we can still see you.
Okay, just that's good for me to know. Because what I wanted to say is, I think we're at the 15th today, so we are 5 days away from the 10th anniversary of the horrific flooding in Calgary. And I'd actually meant to post a few pictures of that. It actually was all over Alberta. 10 years ago now. That was kind of what triggered me. I had just started my business to be a photo organizer, and the first thing I did for about ended up being for several months was clean photos that had been damaged and soaked in water. So with us coming up on the 10th anniversary of a very traumatic time in here, I'm really enjoying doing this, and that's what I think why I'm here, Barbara. That's why Barbara's kept our postponed going, and why I'm doing this is I enjoy the community so much, and I feel so strongly about getting our photos and stories saved from what I saw during that. I was not affected at all. I'm lucky I live on high ground, but what I saw, what happened just in terms of not only to people's lives, but to their photos, that was, I guess, has been my motivation since then, to try and encourage people to get their photos and their stories digitized, to save them and to tell the stories. So I just wanted to recognize for well, Linda would well know, living in this area, that was a pretty rough time back in 2013. And when you talk to people who got evacuated with their 2 and 3-year-old kids in a helicopter, and then the only time that the 2-year-old started to get worried was when after they got out of the helicopter, they were put down, and then they had to get in a boat. And the little kid then decided she didn't really want to be in a boat. But if that's the state you're in, your pictures, if they're in your basement, weren't doing too good. So onwards to more happier times. But here we are again. We're going to be trying to conquer that photo mess one step at a time. And the reason is we go from that mess I showed you first is that then you can somewhat easily find the photos when you need them. That's the whole point of having things exercised, organized. And so there's just a little, this slideshow was from a presentation. I modified it, but it came out of a presentation I gave at a conference in 2019. And so that was part of my introduction of myself, which I thought maybe I'll just, I'll give you a brief overview. I have twins. The top right corner is them 27 years ago, in 1996. The bottom right, I think, is well, I've got long hair, so it has to be before that must be about 2021. There's a couple pictures on the bottom of me teaching. My original job that I started right out of university was a customs inspector. That's the upper left with the nice hat and uniform on. The one next to that is time I worked for several years at the Customs and Excise Training Academy, and I did an exchange program in the US at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. That picture. I also had the occasion, it's kind of a combination of trainer tour guide. I'm at Lake Louise with a group of government employees from Thailand who were over here learning how we did our training for our employees. So just a little background of, sort of skips the step of how I got here. And then the middle picture on the bottom is me presenting at one of the photo managers conferences, and might even have been this presentation. Not sure, one of the presentations. So a little bit about me in the background. I wanted to just quickly go over the 8 steps, just so we would all know where we're at. So we've been talking about the planning phase, the first part, and we're at sort. We're at number 3 now, and next month we're going to step into the digital magic and continue on with the steps there. But I thought we should just remind us where we are right now. Okay, I got to skip a couple slides here. End it. This is now where the technical part gets to torment me. One thing I wanted to mention, well, there's a couple things while I'm trying to figure out how to jump to a slide ahead. I don't know how many of you were in the forum and saw Ann Larkin's comment on my post about Kathy's Corner, about how she did what we've been talking about is breaking the process down into batches. We've been saying you don't have to do all of step 1. You don't have to plan the whole big project. You don't have to do that. There's a way to get to the good part sooner. And Anne put an excellent example in there. And I don't know, Anne, do you mind sharing that project?
Yeah, sure, no problem. It was an idea for my mum, because my mum's got family that she's really close to, and a lot of them were in the army, military during World War II and further back during World War One. And we love talking about the stories and looking at the photographs and all those kinds of things. So for Mum not knowing about this, I decided to gather together all our military photos, all our family in uniform, gathered those together. There was just less than 30, so it was a nice manageable project. I scanned them, put them into a photo book, and on the front, my mum's got some poppies in her garden, so I took a big close-up of the poppy for the front cover. And then I didn't put a lot of writing, I just really put dates in. And then I gave it to Mum as a surprise for her birthday, and she was really quite moved by it. And nearly every time we go around, we get this book out and we go through it again. We know every page and every date and every word in there off by heart by now, but Mum absolutely loves it. So, but it was a nice, small, manageable project, that I was able to get, and really nice outcome really quickly.
And I just love that. It's exactly what we were trying to talk about in Kathy's Corner, and that sometimes I think that gets lost when we're looking at all the different steps, is the steps we go through are similar, regardless of if we're working on 30 photos or 3,000 or 30,000. And you don't have to go through each step on that big 30,000. You can break it down and get that reward of what sounds like an absolutely wonderful, wonderful project. Anne also mentioned on there someone who's a very good friend of mine, Carolyn Gunter, who's otherwise known as the Swedish organizer, in a course that Anne took on project management, I think, from Caroline. Carolyn has and she put the link in the forum, so you can go to Kathy's Corner in the forum and check that out. Carolyn has excellent courses. I've taken several of them. She has wonderful courses on metadata in genealogy. She's also an expert in genealogy, particularly Swedish genealogy, because she is from Sweden. And she wrote a blog, or maybe I'll post it in Kathy's Corner. She wrote a blog a while ago that finally hit home for me with the whole discussion of downsizing, minimalists, everything you should have, you should be able to carry in a bag on your back. And she used the top title of something to the effect of Swedish death cleaning is really good, except for your photo, like for your photos and memorabilia. And I think she raised some very good points that there is a difference. It's different from sorting your sock drawer and getting rid of stuff. It's not the same thing. So, okay, I'm going to try again and see how we're doing here. The other thing while I'm doing this, if anyone would like to tell us their projects, how you're progressing, or if you have any questions, it worked. You can go ahead and just pop in. You'll have to give a wave because now I can't see you when I'm sharing my screen. So.
Why don't we go ahead and just keep on going? We'll fire it up, but just know that Kathy's eager to have this turn the tables and have you all share where you are on your own projects as we progress through the conversation. Oh, there we go. Anna, go ahead.
Just needed to unmute me. So I'm working on a slightly larger project than Anne's. For the it's sort of like heritage society that I'm part of in an area not far from where I live, where I have roots, and we have been scanning photos for years now, whenever they turn up, and we try to identify as much as possible. And what we have been doing is to print out photos of cottages and houses that have been torn down. Some of them were built already in the 1400s, and some of them were only about 100 years old when they were torn down. So there were different reasons for them going down as well. Sometimes it could have been because due to the mining underneath, the risk of it falling down in the mine and stuff like that. A bit similar to northern Sweden, where they're now moving a whole city so it doesn't fall down the mine. And we've been printing this out, and we've been collecting. I've been in charge in collecting information about these houses, when they were built, when they were torn down, roughly, if we don't have exact dates, a bit about the people who have been living there, what occupations they've been having. And now we're putting up signs. We're starting on Saturday, putting up signs all around in the area and mapping where the signs are so people can go out and visit. And anyone who wants to follow us when we put them up can do that. And we can tell the story about people who have been living there and different stories about, you know, the stories about the places, who lived there and why was it built, and were they soldiers or were they miners or were they working the forest or were they building coal mines, producing charcoal for the ironworks.
Excuse me, Anna, do you know historypin.org?
No.
Let me get you, I'll post the link in a moment, but it turns out I just checked. I didn't know they actually had presence in Sweden as well. It's a nonprofit that is
Cool.
very much looking at that kind of place and history of what this place used to be based on old photographs. It's really interesting. Might be very much in your wheelhouse.
Great. That sounds like an incredible project. Hi, Joe Kennedy. Welcome. Okay, so sorting, as I mentioned, last step before digitizing is the sorting. And sorting is another area that it's sort of somewhat dependent on how much stuff you have. I'm going to tell you some ways to do it. To a large degree, it doesn't really matter how you do it. It's just a good idea to kind of get some sorting going. And we're going to talk about different ways to sort. If you've got your plan and your if you did your gathering and your plan, so now we can talk about that. That should give you some structure about what your next steps are and where you want to start. So we're starting today from the point where you have gathered a bunch of stuff, and we're going to talk about how to go through a sorting process. So the first thing is to set up a work area, and I'm lucky. I have a fairly large office, like it's actually 2 rooms. But I've got so much stuff in here right now, I had to move it out. I'm moving it down to the basement onto a table. So if you can get a table, you know, some people use their dining room table and then you have to eat in the living room, but wherever you can find a bit of space, get yourself a bit of space so that you can start sorting. I like to put on the tables I'm sorting on, I cover them with a big piece of newsprint, like I don't know everywhere else, but here you can get rolls of newsprint or just the same kind of paper they printed out of print newspapers on, or used to print newspapers on when we had those things. But it's about this tall, it's about 3 feet long, and it covers a table perfectly. And it's not there's nothing on it that's going to get on the photos. And I can write right on it if something, I can actually write notes in front of the pile right on the table, which is better than writing on your actual table because that's sort of a one-time thing. It makes it difficult the more times you write on it. So somewhere to set up a work table and gather up the items that you've been sorting, which is what I've basically been working on since our last call. When I talked about gathering, I thought, you know, Kathy should do some gathering because I've got stuff in quite a few places, and I keep finding things that I started projects a long time ago and they didn't get finished. So I've started this gathering process so I can get a good view of where in the process various different projects are at. And I've sort of divided mine. There's one big project is my mom's family heritage. Then there'd be my husband's family. Then there's our family with our kids as separate. And then all that time in between before we got married and when I left home, like between my childhood and when we got married. So there's several different areas that have to be worked on. So I'm trying to keep stuff sort of separate. Sort containers. I like to use clear containers because then I can glance at them and I don't have to look back to see what the notes say. I can look at the container and go, And these ones in the picture here obviously have not been dealt with yet. This is from a long time ago. They actually are all dealt with now, but those are gathered containers of a project. So as you can see, a lot of them have been moved into a very broad category called photos to sort, which were all loose photos that weren't particularly attached in any other container. Again, we talked about where the work area that you need and an area for tools. Okay, figured out how to see you when I'm doing this. Now all I need to do is figure out how to move my slides, and then we're laughing. There we go. So again, variety of plastic bins. I've got a whole bunch of different things that we've used. It's mostly clear. The black containers you see there are from Creative Memories. They've made them for years. They're smaller now, but they've got pockets in them. They're made out of a photo-safe plastic. So if you started sorting in them, maybe 20 years ago and haven't quite finished yet, your pictures are protected. I had some accordion files I've used, but you can use photo boxes too. The shoe box is full. Actually, those 3 in the bottom are full of photos that have to be shredded. They are all duplicates or triplicates. So that's on another pile of job to do. Tools. That's a picture of a tool table. That was a work one, but Sharpies are good not to write on photos, but to label bins and boxes with your painter's tape. I have photo-safe pencils if I want to make notes on photos. This was before COVID, and I still had masks because of the nature of the work I started with. It isn't uncommon in old photos to discover very messy or dusty or even moldy things. And I did learn by the hard way during the floods, and when I cleaned all the photos that had been damaged in the flood. Mold starts to grow on a wet photo in about 24 hours. If it's dried with the mold on it, as soon as that mold finds somewhere damp, it will grow again. And it turns to dust, which becomes airborne. And so there's these really neat places it can go if you're not pretty careful when you're handling dried moldy photos, is it gets in your lungs. So you don't want that. So don't do that. Magnifying glasses are handy. Somebody said, what on earth are you doing with screwdrivers and pliers? That's to get the stuff out of photos. We were using cotton gloves then. Nitrile gloves are fine. Your hands are great if you just wash them before handling the materials. I talked about the masks there. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good coverage of all the tools. And archival products. I have purchased with the collection that I did, because there was so many old photos in them, I actually purchased archival sleeves even during the sort process to put the pictures in, just so they don't get more damage done to them, because a lot of them are very fragile, they're cracking, and you just don't want to get them damaged. So I would put them in their archival sleeves already. So, okay. There we go. So now that we're going to talk more about it with Barbara later on, using facial organization tool technology can significantly make the burden of sorting easier, because you can actually do it after you've digitized and use the technology to do that. But you do need to find some way to get stuff ready to scan that isn't just, because if you start and pick up, you pick up the big bin number 1 of the mess, it's not really ready to scan. And so you're spending time cleaning, and then you go and, the top of the box is a 4x6 photo. Underneath that is a videotape. Underneath that is a 11x16 document. You're going to run into all sorts of different things. So that's kind of what we talk about in rough sort, is getting things together to scan them. Part of this is if you decide you want to bring a professional in to help with your scanning, you might want to spend a bit more time sorting so you don't waste money having blurry or duplicate photos scanned, which is how I've got all those big boxes of duplicates. I'm on there, good. For a rough sort, one of the best ways I found after trying a whole bunch of different ways was that I needed to sort initially by media type. You don't digitize a 4:6 picture the same way you digitize a VHS tape or reel-to-reel film. So initially we started separating things into whether they were photos that have to be scanned by a photo scanner, or documents that could go through a document scanner, or certificates, things that are framed that we want to photograph within the framed photos separated, because obviously you have to get them out of this frame before you throw them on the scanner. So we went essentially by media type. You can also use broad categories or themes. Once we were sort of separating into what got the media stuff apart, then when we started in, obviously the largest pile of stuff is photos, so, and documents and things. So then we separated them into themes such as charitable events, work, family, ancestors, golf. The family that I was doing, they were very involved in golf. Their charitable things they did. They were also very big in something called the Basset Walk, which was, I guess, an event every year where you took your Basset hounds out for a walk. So there were a lot of pictures that belonged in there. So we just put them all in there just to get some sort of breakdown of things. Or you can do things like Christmas, holidays, vacations, anything like that.
Kathy, one of the biggest challenges I find in going through my own stuff, I mean, it's one thing to do it for someone else, but doing it for your own stuff is the you know where I'm going, the nostalgia sinks. You pick this one picture up, oh, and then you want to go show a husband, you want to show the children, and then pretty soon you're posting it somewhere or whatever else. How do you manage that? What's the secret?
I think it's part of when we talked about in planning is setting aside a time. You need to be set aside and say, okay, I'm not going to look at any single item more than 3. Well, in this case, if you're dividing media types, it's like not even looking at pictures. I'm throwing big piles of pictures in a box, not even opening the envelopes. I'm putting the movies in the beginning. As you start to break and actually are looking at stuff, that's partly, I guess, where it's helpful to have someone that's less sentimental work with you, because for me, well, actually, I'm lying if I say it's easy for me to do it with other people's photos, especially old photos. If it's the new photos, fine. That's Bouchard Gardens. I've seen 100 pictures of it. But if it's the old ancestors' photos, it is hard not to want to go, oh, what's this, and who are these people, and when was this, and go, you can go down a rabbit hole pretty easy. So it's, I guess, a case of discipline that you think, or saying, if I sort this box, then in my next 15 minutes I can look at the pictures in it. Or
it's like giving yourself a piece of chocolate, or
yes, a piece of chocolate, that's good. Yeah.
In my own work, I use things like these little Post-it notes that are, like sign here notes.
Yeah.
To like tell myself, ooh, that's when I get to come back to.
Absolutely.
So any kind of organizational trick, go ahead, use them on yourself.
Yes, that's important. Okay, I've got, nope, that's not the one that'll let me change my, I have like 4 windows. There's the one I'm looking for. 4 windows open now. So now I can actually see you if I want. So you can also search by dates. And I have another slide coming up in a bit with some more dates on it. So different methods when we get to talking about dates, but one is sifting. Another one is by theme or chronological order. Another method's called ABCs, and another one is the index card system. So if we start with sifting, think of a big funnel, and you can do types of media I just mentioned. Size of the object to be scanned is very important, because depending on what size even a photograph or a document is, it may require a different scanner. types of media also includes negatives and slides, because you can't scan them with the same scanner that you're going to use on your photos. Another way to sift is by shape of the photo. Because, and part of that reason is that can help you if you've got a big mess. If there's a bunch of square photos or a bunch of Polaroids, they aren't going to necessarily go with the 4x6 photos. Like a lot of the square photos were at an earlier time. It's another way to get clues from the photos themselves. The edges of the photos, this can also become another rabbit hole if you decide you want to research the scalloped edges on photos, because the different scalloped edges were done by different printers, had different, and I can pop up a resource sheet later that tells you about the years when a certain edge might be from. And with artificial intelligence, with the last sort of boom that's come in it, some of this might not even be necessary by the time we all get to talking about organizing our digital stuff. But for right now, that's another way to sort, because I've sorted, and this helps your problem, Barb, because you sort them face down. You don't look at the pictures. You sort your pile by, okay, this one has scalped edges. This is smooth edge. This is a 3x5, and just go whisking them through. And you'll often find when you flip them over that you've now got all the ones that go together relatively together.
That's tough. Wow. A quick pointer too is that we're going to take all of these kinds of sites that help you find things, whether it's that one by edges, which I love. There's also things like the Photographer's Index. I can't remember what that one is, but that helps you find dates based on who the artist, we can collect those kinds of things in the forum. So this is a plug to go back over there into the forum. We'll be posting those kinds of resources. Go on, also, Kathy. Sorry to interrupt.
Continuing with this sifting or looking at the backs, the printing on the back, even if it is just a photographer's logo on the back, or that was stamped on sometimes there's numbers, and they're apparently random numbers, but they were actually batch numbers. So I've gone through piles of older photos that all have, they all have 008 on the back. And the other one, some had 16 on them. And by the time when you pile them up by number and flip them over, quite often they're sorted into the batches that then you can look at the picture, which is easier than trying to sort a big stack of photos face up and go, okay, that's snowy, that's water, that's this, trying to figure out what's going on. You can sort by date. If you're going by date, you got to be consistent. That's all I'll say. Use whatever system makes sense to you. I like year, month, day, because then if I'm looking through a whole pile of stuff, they're in order. If you do, and you need to be consistent on month and day, because if you don't, and some of it is actually country-based. People, they use different methods. But if you don't know, if somebody puts a date on something and you don't know for sure which, or worse, they change back and forth between putting month and day or day and month, that doesn't help much if you don't know what they did. So when you're like big batches, you can sort by decades, which we did 1900 to 1909 to be a decade. We did a lot by half decade if we were more, had a better idea but didn't know the specific year. If it's unknown months, we did 01 for winter, 01W for winter, 04-SP for spring, 07-SU for summer, and 10-F for fall. Now, if you don't live somewhere like I do, where those are distinctive seasons, you may want to find a different sequence for sorting those months. The date on the photo, important thing to keep in mind there is it might not be, it's the date it was developed. So depending on the family I did the work for, they usually were developing their photos within a month after they took them. In my family, sometimes it was a year. So you can't go and say, oh, well, this says it's 1959. It may actually have been taken in 1958. I'm going to just whip through these. As I said, I'm using these are just other things that can help you date a photo when you're trying to use that as your category. More specifics, we'll probably get into this more when we're talking about organizing our digital copies and trying to get more specific. That's the really fun part too, right, Barb? When
Yep.
we're looking at this, all the stuff in the photo and the cameos.
There are also, I'm thinking of things for resources to add to the forum. There are some excellent books on the subject of dating,
dating
photos.
Can't remember her name. It'll come back to me.
Nope,
Maureen
don't
Taylor.
worry about it. We'll just add those in there. I know
Photo
Anna
detective.
and
She's
other
got
number
some
of you that are
good
really
ones,
good at this and will know what those resources are.
So the method that I've used, I'm using it with my own photos, is to use index cards to put on batches of photos, not necessarily individual items, particularly if you have cross-media things that go together. Like you've got the birthday party from 1960 and you have a movie cassette from that same party, is to write, and this, I think, Barb, is partly too when if things are triggering memories when you're looking at the photos, I'd write it down, because I don't know about all of you, but my mind is just not really that reliable. So if I can think of something, so this is just a picture of somebody sorting pictures and writing on index cards. Why? Because it gives you a place to write stuff down. Instead of using sticky notes, we just use a card. You can buy a pack of index cards, and we number them, and we write any information on it that we have. If it's the date, what it was, if we know what it was. And a lot of this is useful if you're taking photos out of albums or out of envelopes where the envelope has information on it, because you don't really want to keep all those envelopes. First of all, they're not photo safe, and why would you? They're like not nice paper. But when you take a batch of photos out, it's good to write down if there was some information on the envelope. I've already talked about what it is. It's just using index cards. And the how of it is simply, I think I have a picture of a card coming up, but I use the same sheet. This is just a piece of it. This is one we're writing by hand, but I use for my own stuff, I use that same organizing checklist that we shared with you on Google Drive. But I printed out Avery numbers, and I print 4 just because there's lines of 4 and it's easiest. Those are just sticky little labels, and I can stick them on the index cards. If there's a physical thing like a picture in a frame that goes with it, I can stick a number on the edge of the frame, and then I can just write down on, because it's hard to put a card on top of a frame or something. So I can just write the information down on the index card and put it with the documents or the photos. And then everything is tracked so that when we go to put everything after it's been scanned, we scanned all those cards. And so now I can just look at the number on the card, and I know that I have to find the photograph of the stuff or anything else that goes with it.
The nifty thing about using a number like that is that if you've got then everything into some other archive, you can do a search on the number.
Exactly.
And do things that way. I mean, these are fundamentals of mapping an analog world to a digital world that comes as the principles in a warehouse are exactly the same in many ways.
Cool.
You know, having a tracker code. Oh yeah, in a factory, I got to tell you. And if you have tracker things that stay with it, you have increasingly, QR codes, or whatever else it takes. Use your imagination. But the key point is you're trying to take information that's popping up with a physical object and how that goes through its
have
workflow.
an ability to sort it digitally later.
Right. And not lose this information.
And not lose information. I always suggest that if when you're sorting and prepping stuff for digitizing, and again, it depends on, are you taking albums apart or digitizing them as they are, is to start with albums first. And even if we're taking them apart, like we took a lot of albums apart because they were the old, what was called, fondly remembered as the magnetic albums, otherwise known as unsafe, non-archival glue that you stuck your photos into albums. With unsafe plastic over top of them in the old days, is to take a quick photo of just with your camera, take a photo of the page that's intact, particularly if there is writing in the album. And then, but that way you'll also know what photos went together on what page. You maintain that structure for if you need it later, and you know where the pictures should go. If you're going to scan them as intact albums, then, which can be done too, then I wouldn't, then obviously you're not going to take the pictures, and it wouldn't matter when you scan them. The only thing about albums is usually there's stuff written in it, and often there's even dates written down, which are just like, those are like your dream when you find something that somebody wrote the date on, because it's, and the names of the people. It just helps so much with putting everything together when you see other things together. So separate out your duplicates, bad photos, irrelevant documents. I throw them away because, you know, that's...
You actually talked about shredding them too.
I'm shredding the photos. Sadly, they're not recyclable. We recycled all the paper that was, you know, if there were like magazine clippings for a recipe, and it was like, yeah, that's not really going to be part of the family legacy. And it's not even going to be part of something we want to save that isn't part of the legacy. We would recycle anything that could be recyclable. Photos can't be recycled that were actually developed through a print process because of the chemicals in the that was used in the developing process. So,
right. Warning, Kathy, that
photos,
we're at 15 minutes.
Sorry?
We're at a 15-minute warning.
I know, I'm going fast now. Themes we talked about, documents, and then refine. You're going to take everything out. That's kind of obvious. Oh, I'm through everything. How do you like that? I'm going to go back one because something else occurred to me in a minute, but I forget what it was now. We're talking about taking frames, sorting. It's gone.
All right.
I'm just going to glance at my notes for a minute and see if I remember what I was trying to say. Oh, another option is for making broad categories is what Kathy Nelson, the founder of the Photo Managers, called the ABCs method. And A was for album, B was for box. So A was a photo that you was so good you'd put in the album. B was something you'd keep but in a box. And so this was developed in the old making paper albums days. And C was can for garbage. And then the S didn't probably fit into the C category, but it told the story, as to make sure when you're getting rid of, that's what I wanted to say, when you're getting rid of the duplicates, bad photos and things, that you make sure you're not losing stuff that tells a story. Like you look in there and go, oh, that's just a photo of a house, but maybe it's the house your parents grew up in or something. So I'm just going to throw all these out because this is probably what happens. The way we're talking about this, where you don't have to sort everything all at once, even if you do that as a professional, there's something called scope creep. And this is examples of stuff that came to me various points during the year. My friend's post there that I should have blocked your name out, but it's hard to read anyway. And her text was, oh my God, I'm at the ranch. Look what I found. Some I have never seen before, some of my family and aunts and uncles too. And so that was a text I got after we thought we had sorted everything. I'll close it off with, if you're struggling with what to keep and what to throw away, think about for your family that's coming, think about what they need to have, what they need to see, and what they need to know. So you want to keep things in physical form that you want them to have. Keep in at least digital form of things you want people to see, like by taking photographs of things like trophies, and then you can get rid of the trophies. And things they need to know, and that's where our whole thing comes in of stories.
And connecting them.
And connecting the stories.
Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kathy. That's you okay?
The smoke, I say.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's a very good overview of where this is, along with enough of the particulars that we can dive back in as reminders as we sit down, get that workspace ready to go, and really focus on those bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did we want to take a moment now? You're all very elegantly on mute for yourselves. I can't unmute you. I can mute some alarm that's gone off or something. I can't unmute you, but you can go ahead and chime in a little bit with where you are right now, because we're trying to build these ongoing meetings as a way to check in and see what's going on. So I won't call on you, but you know you're dying to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, I think Linda's going to get off mute and ask us something.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what I did.
There you go.
Okay. This started 7 years ago when my mom passed away. So I got everything, brought all the albums, everything home. I took everything out of every album, stacked it all on a card table in my dining room, living room sort of thing, and started there. And I tried to go from the earliest date to the date she passed away, sort of thing. And that's how I sorted it. And then I stuck them with an index system. And I did it in chronological order up to the date she passed away. And they're all scanned, they're all digitized. And at the moment, I'm trying to get them onto 6 or whatever you call it, to pass on to the families. I got to that point. So I've done, but it's taken me 7 years, a long time, because you can't work on them all the time. There's other things, life gets in the way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
that's my so far.
Excellent. Excellent.
Oh, great. Sounds like it's worked for you.
Yeah. Well, it went pretty well.
Others to add in? I'm not going to pick on you. I'm trying not to pick on you. You're taking the time to come and join us this afternoon because you're working on this.
Jo has just posted that she's watching volleyball practice and we couldn't hear her if she came off mute. She said she's trying to plug away at scanning all the immediate family photos and then on to the grandparents' albums, photos, and negatives.
Great. I think one of the most important things about pushing ahead with a scan step before you get back to the storytelling is because you're worried that you're going to lose something. I totally understand that. And, taking bits as they come, definitely important.
Well,
Definitely.
And I think that's a good point, Barbara, because what you don't want to do, you don't really want to necessarily just create, like just scan, digitize absolutely everything without any sorting, because really all you've done then is made a digital mess. However, and then you get to spend more time, and I did a lot of sorting manually because I like that better. I like to touch the stuff better than staring at my computer all the time. But that's going to be an eventuality anyway. But the other side of that coin is when I opened my presentation with a story about the severe flooding, and that seems to now we fires and everything else. Eeks, like it's much easier to securely get your digitized stuff somewhere safe than it is all that your house full of physical stuff. So
well, I'm also looking at media. I have in my mom's collection, as it turns out, stacks and stacks. I just found a whole nother book of CD-ROMs that are full of images. I don't have any devices left that can read that media, but I'm pretty sure that the Mormon Temple, which is very near us here, they have a fabulous family search library there. So I plan to go in there with stacks at a time of my CDs and walk out with sticks.
You can also purchase drives that'll read your CDs. Then they're not expensive.
I'm spending my money on the community.
I started in 2020 during the pandemic. I moved back to the place where we raised our family. My husband stayed up in Cape Breton because he was still working. And I was alone, and I decided I would follow the photo managers, and I did the first conference online,
Wow.
and very quickly glommed onto some very good ideas and programs to start sorting. The big one was PhotoMine. And I went to my albums, and I have those lovely magnetic things. And I did some of them, I did all of the tricks, the heating them and using the warm scraper, and I used
Dental floss?
floss. I did everything. And some of them
No
just came
mint.
up as they all curled, basically. They were a mess. So I used double-sided tape, and I taped them down, and then I did my PhotoMine thing. And now I go back to some of those, and I find that they're pixelated, I'll say, because they've lost a lot of things. Now, I still kept the photos, and I can still redo it, but I won't redo it in PhotoMine.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you one thing that happened when I went to migrate all my albums from PhotoMine. They all came over onto my computer as every album, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I had done this before, I have duplicates, triplicates of Photo 1, Photo 2, Photo 3, etc. So yeah, I could see your face, and that's exactly how I felt. Like, no.
And
So I
that's
have a lot
something
of
we're
work.
going to talk about, Marcy.
Yeah.
I think, next month when we start to talk about digitizing. And I go into a category of good enough, better, and best. And if you follow the photo managers,
Yes.
photo managers are
Yep.
at the point, the phone, how do you say, phone scanning is getting way, way better by the moment. Like now you may have a better phone in your camera than you do in your DSLR, like a more higher pixel camera. But you do have to be kind of wary, but we'll have a little chat about that next week.
That's good.
How to do that, and maybe just how you can fix up the worst of them.
Right.
Yes. Well, actually, one thing about the photo album is that I could, even if I saw one I really didn't want to keep, I could just rip it out.
Yeah.
So maybe with just 4 minutes left, and I'm trying to keep very tightly to these programs because we're creating videos that we're going to be able to go back to. And also, here's what I want to do in my time is give you plugs for ways that we can keep this going. This is a community. We're getting to know each other. And we have offline to these now through this forum, postponga.podia.com, a way to share the resources, a way to keep these conversations going, to compare notes and resources about the best things. I think that's especially going to become true as we hit on topics relating to tools, to specific software tools. And did you know that? MyHeritage has come out with a big competitor to PhotoMine, which is kind of interesting all by itself. So don't worry. It's okay. We're going to be going into all of those things. And I have a session on facial organization, really AI-fueled tools for your photos coming up next month. But while I'm here, since I took the floor, I'm going to very quickly run through let me quickly run through what I had in mind for a quick wrap up of of where we're going to take these things from here. As I said, the forum is at postponga.podia.com. It's a third-party platform that is free to me, hint, but is, I think, working well in terms of having a way to have threads, have conversations, and have it be there so we can come back to it. You can also go back and edit what you've put in. I'm putting the recordings in there. So it's private in the sense that this isn't out on YouTube. Haven't quite figured out what I'm doing with the Ponga YouTube channel yet, but that stuff is all still accessible for now. But these recordings I'm keeping shared in the in the forum. I'm also going to be sending out in the forum a link for feedback. Thanks so much to those of you who gave me the feedback on a previous session that I did. I'm going to be doing that for each of these different sessions, nice and simple questions. And it's really been very, very helpful. And finally, you have seen how in our new homepage at postponga.com, and by the way, it's new almost every other day. I'm always futzing with it. But I've just done a big change to it that structures the homepage roughly to Kathy's 8 steps, because we've realized that really the 8 steps is kind of this flow as you're getting from analog into digital. But it really then overlays to what I've called these 5 elements. So to me, this is now the 8x5, because the 5 elements are bringing in layers like privacy and archiving that fit in as a task, but it's also kind of an overall consideration as you go from good, better, best, manage through your ways to take these steps. So I want to raise that for you. In fact, next week Thursday at the same bat time. Well, not exactly time. I think that one's a morning session. Better for you in Europe. We are rotating through these events to focus on these areas, create little videos we can come back to, and give ourselves some space to open up the dialogue, open up the discussion. So with that, let me bring this event to a close. I will stop the recording if you're welcome to stay late, because there's no problem with that. And then also to carry on the conversation on the forum. And please do feel free to share thoughts and resources that have been helpful to you with others there in the forum for everyone to benefit. And again, thank you so much. This has just been absolute joy for me to watch so many of you continuing to participate, even as we've entirely changed our approach and forum. It's heartwarming. Thank you. So I am stopping the recording. Stop.
Thank you.
Stop recording.